All right, everybody. Hello, hello. It is now running on every platform. In fact, why don't we get this going on Instagram Live too? Let's get this going on a whole bunch of different platforms. We've got Facebook going, we have YouTube going, we have lots of different platforms going. Let's get an Instagram Live started as well. Here we go. Allow. Okay, yes. Live. Record. It's checking my connection. Okay, I believe we're now good to go on every platform. So let's move this here. Let's move Instagram over here. All right, everybody. Hello, hello. Hope you're doing very well. This is another Tuesday Talks with Azren. For those of you who are new to this to the segment here, it's pretty straightforward. This is a weekly segment every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, Tuesday at noon, at least noon my time, where talk about a different language learning topic. It's a language learning topic that typically gets voted in the Calgary, Language Learning Nerds Facebook group. There's a poll that goes out, people vote, and it's a whole thing. This time around, real talk, I think we forgot to post the poll. So I was looking for like the poll, and I was trying to figure out what the voted topic was, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, oh crap, did we completely forget to post it this time? So we may not have posted it. I can't figure it out. So if there was a topic that's voted in and that's not the topic I've chosen, my apologies. With all that aside, let's dive into our topic. So the topic for our Tuesday Talks today is why you can understand others when they speak in another language, but you're unable to speak. Actually, before we jump in, I want to type this into Instagram. So let's get this in here. Rant, why you can understand, but can't speak in another language. There we go. Post. Let's pin that to the top. There we go. Cool. So let me share some of my thoughts on the topic. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the comments. And here we go. So when I think about being able to understand in another language, but being unable to speak, the biggest thing that comes to mind, at least for me, is something like Hindi. So I speak Gujarati. I've grown up speaking Gujarati with my family. It's a language from India, but I haven't grown up speaking Hindi. And yet when I hear Hindi, I'm able to understand to a certain extent what they're saying, but I can't speak Hindi whatsoever. Like I couldn't get a word, like I could barely say something like, oh, my name is this, what's your name? Like even the most basic things are quite challenging for me to say in Hindi, and I just don't know how. So then the question becomes, how does that happen? How is it that you're able to understand Hindi, but you can't speak? Well, it's because, for me anyway, it's because Hindi is reasonably similar to Gujarati. And so when I hear it, I can kind of make the connection to what it sounds like in Gujarati. And I can be like, oh, that Hindi word sounds like this Gujarati word. Oh, so that's what that must mean. But for me to actually say that, I wouldn't be able to, because all I'm doing in my mind is making a comparison from one language to the language I speak. And with that comparison, I'm able to figure out what the person's saying. So that's definitely one case for me personally, and for plenty of people that I know. Another similar thing that happens, and this is more in the context of languages. So if your family speaks a language and you grew up in a household where people spoke that language, but you for some reason can't speak it, well, it's because what happened was at some point growing up, you were hearing it and you were listening to it, but when you actually replied, you got in the habit of replying in English. So you got used to hearing it and piecing together what people are saying, but you never actually got words out of your mouth. You never actually spoke and got things out of your mouth. And so you can understand that heritage language when people speak it to you, but you are not able to actually produce the language yourself because it's not something you ever did. When you needed water or something, or when you're a baby or a young child and you wanted something or needed something, you just used English or used another language. You didn't use that heritage language that your family spoke. So that's another possible 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 scenario. You know, often what happens when people are growing up as well, like I think my cousin would have been a good example of it. When we were younger, I remember she would understand Gujarati reasonably well, like reasonably well, she would understand. But speaking it was, you know, she just didn't speak it. And that was because with her mom, you know, and her dad as well, her dad spoke English, but, you know, her mom spoke Gujarati, but with mom, she spoke in English. And the only time she heard Gujarati was between other people. So she heard other people speak in Gujarati and she'd observe it and she'd listen and she'd see how they react. So her ears in a way got semi-trained and she can say, oh, that person said, "Mana bhook lagi che." Oh, okay. That, and then he's touching his stomach like, oh, that means he's hungry. But she never actually had to use Gujarati with others and to communicate. She never did because everyone spoke to her in English, but she observed others in Gujarati. And sometimes people kind of spoke to her in Gujarati a little bit, but she'd still reply for the most part in English. So that's something that can happen as well. Now, what if you're an adult learner? What if you're learning like French and you're like, Azren, I didn't grow up with French. It's not some heritage language. I don't speak something similar to French. Like that's not, but I still understand a lot of French, but I cannot speak it for the life of me. What the heck is going on there? Well, let me explain. There's a variety of options, but a very common thing that might be happening is that you are able to, when you're listening to someone speak in French, you're able to catch enough keywords and you're able to use context to piece everything together to understand generally what the person said. It's kind of like I do in German. So the business I run, Calgary Language Nerds, we have German classes. I personally don't speak German. I personally don't teach German, but we have German classes. And I remember various times, multiple times. Most recent one would have been 3 weeks ago. There is a German class, the first German class being taught with a new group. And I was present in the class and the German teacher was there. And I was taking a couple of notes. And we had a bit of a tech issue where the Google Doc wasn't loading for the teacher. So I was just helping out and typing the notes for the German. So he would say something and the people would say something. And I would, even though I don't speak German, I know they're meeting for the first time. I know that they're beginners. So often when they'd say things, I hear a couple of words that are kind of like English or I've kind of heard before. I knew the context of the class and the meeting. So I would understand a lot of what they were saying. And I was able to go like, oh yeah, that means how old are you? Oh, that means why are you studying German? Oh yeah, I know, I understood that. Or another time I was in a coffee shop and a bunch of German speakers were there and they're like, hi, in German. I understood they said hi because they said hello. And I was like, oh, it sounds like hello. They also, then they asked me something and I think there's like, how are you? And I didn't even, I knew they asked me, how are you? From the body language, from his tone of voice. And I knew exactly what he asked me. But I wouldn't be able to say, how are you? I don't know how to say that. But the context, the tone of voice, the body language, I probably unconsciously heard a couple things that rung a bell in my mind that I'm able to figure out what they're saying. So a lot of people that struggle to speak, but are able to understand, that's what's really going on. You're picking up on context clues, a couple of key words, and you're able to do enough of that to figure out what people are saying, but you can't actually produce it because there's so much that the person's saying that you're not absorbing. You're only getting the key information and context and body language and tone of voice, other things, but you don't have enough information in your mind to actually form the sentence. Like in Hindi, I can understand a lot of Hindi because it's similar to Gujarati, but I don't know how to form the sentence. I don't know how to form that grammar tenses. I don't know how to say the Hindi word. So when I try to speak Hindi, it ends up being this like weird Gujarati Hindi mix, right? So that's kind of what tends to happen. So a lot of people, that's really what's going on. So some tips that can help with that, I'll give a couple. I've shared a lot recently about speaking, but I'll share a few more. Some tips that can help with that is keeping journaling on a daily basis and trying to actually write and do output in the target language, because that's going to force you to be like, how do I say that word? How do I conjugate that tense? How do I do that? Right? Even just doing some more speaking practice, finding opportunities to do speaking practice, that can help with that, of course, as well. I think as well, something to think about is, not think about, but something to really push yourself to do is when you're listening to people, you have to ask, how do I say this? You have to, hard to explain. certain people, there's two types of listeners. When you get language learners, there's two types of listening. Some people listen for keywords and context, and they just listen for the stuff they recognize, and they piece together meaning from that. And some people really listen word by word, and they're really listening, and they're listening for the grammar points. They recognize the words they don't know. They really listen in a very detailed fashion. There's advantages and disadvantages. It is advantages and disadvantages to both styles of listening, by the way. It's not like one is better. But if you are someone who listens for more general meaning, I want to push you to the other side a little bit. I want to push you to listen in a more detailed fashion, to recognize he said the word this, and I don't know what that word means. She said that word, I don't know what that means. There's a lot of that kind of stuff you got to kind of recognize those things that you got to recognize those things that usually you're just not even, your brain's not even registering. They didn't understand the word, right? But you have to make your brain register that you didn't understand that word. Does that make sense? And a lot of people don't do that. They just catch the key words and they don't even register. Their brain doesn't even realize they missed a word and they don't know what it means. Super, super common. All right, we're gonna wrap up the stream on Facebook and on YouTube. Instagram, we're gonna keep it going because we got someone who's got a live video request. So we're gonna let them in. Let's do that. What's my battery? 12% battery, so that's fine. Let's let them in. So YouTube, see you. Bye-bye. Talk to you later. Facebook.